Hey, what is up, my brothers and sisters? This is Mike Tharp with the Financial Freedom Family. Today we are going global, international with one of my favorite former students, Christian from Denmark. Just checking in with Christian. How's everything going over there in Denmark right now, Christian?
Given the circumstances, it's going pretty good. So last year I was an exchange student in Greenville, and I had history. I had you as a history teacher, and I really enjoyed my time there. So now I'm excited to see how the world is doing from a different perspective.
Yeah, and it was so cool having Christian in class because I always love having foreign exchange students in class to give the U.S. students a different perspective, to let them see like there's an education system that's different, their healthcare system, how they view history, how they view a world war is going to be completely different. Because really where we're at and how we grow up and educated controls a lot of what we believe, whether that be good or bad. So I was always big on getting Christian's perspective, and we kind of kept in communication just because I feel like we always learn from each other when we talked. So Christian, I kind of stick to talking about mindset, health, and wealth on the F3 show. So just kind of give me your mindset and how you kind of feel the average person in Denmark is viewing now, like what are your restrictions, what are your guidelines, and then we talked a little bit about maybe how you bring in Sweden. So kind of give us a big overall perspective here.
So about 6 weeks ago, we completely shut down. So like shopping malls and hair salons and restaurants, all of that had to close down, and that has of course been affecting us a lot. And the way that most Danes are viewing it, it's some are looking at it like being this is an overreaction. Some believe that we should just have shut down even more, even faster, and we should still be shut down. Just this past week, we're slowly starting to open up again. Some kids are returning back to school. Hair salons are starting to open up again, and stores are slowly starting to accept customers again. But it all depends on from whose perspective you see it. And if we take in Sweden into that consideration, Sweden hasn't really shut down at all compared to us. They've been fairly slow at making restrictions and setting boundaries for what people are allowed to do. So that has been kind of odd for us Danes, since we all part of the northern countries, and we look at ourselves as being fairly like we have the same mindset and thoughts when it comes to things like this. But Sweden attacked the problem in a different manner. And what's interesting is that the Swedish numbers, they have a lot more deaths, they have a lot more people that have caught the virus, but at the same time they've managed to keep the country up and running to some degree.
Yeah, and I like what you said there about like some people are saying stay home, do everything the government says, don't really question it because you want to save lives. And then other people, especially in America, as we're more kind of liberty minded and care more about rights and constitutions, where people are really going out. And Michigan has been one of the strictest states in America as far as what we can and can't do. Like right now, we can't build, you can't buy paint, you can't even go to your second house if you have one. Supposedly, that's what they've said. You can't buy seeds. I believe you can't. If you can even go on a boat is in question. So are people generally open and supportive of what Sweden has done, or do you hear a lot of people saying they're being reckless and they're just making it worse?
Most people are saying that they're making it worse. Like that's the overall perspective. And actually a lot of Swedish people and Danes living in Sweden are following the Danish rules of how to behave during this pandemic. And that has been really interesting, that the Swedish citizens are looking outside of Sweden as how they should behave during all of this.
Right. And I think that kind of gets me into the mindset that I like to talk about and teach, is really trying to get people to understand is that you're your own boss now. And especially with, we'll talk about education soon, but I'm trying to get students to understand that, okay, if you didn't like the school system and you didn't like people telling you what to do, and you said all this stuff you were learning was useless anyways, now it's time to, put your money where your mouth is and actually start doing it. Like, learn about anything you want. I got one student set up where he's starting to learn how to DJ. Other students are getting into photography or video game streaming, whatever it is with the internet now. I mean, I can talk to you in Denmark anytime we want, and anyone in the whole world can watch. So this whole technology revolution is huge. And I still think people are struggling with how to use it and how to monopolize it and actually monetize it for whatever passion that you have to follow in the world.
I agree.
So what is like one mindset tip you've done in the last month that you think has kind of helped you deal with this whole situation?
Like giving yourself something to do, like deciding that today I'm going to go for a run. Today I'm going to do this. Today I'm going to do that. Because it's easy to just sit in front of your computer or play video games all day, but you don't really gain anything from doing that. And you just get more tired, and it just gets more frustrating that you're stuck at home. So like, find things to do, even the small minor things, and do that and accomplish that, feel good about it, and move on to the next task.
Yes, I literally just made a video on this last night of basically what you're saying is be intentional and be organized with the plan. And that's where I think a lot of students I work with struggle. And I think even adults are struggling now, and I'm struggling with it because it's your time to do and structure however you want. And we're not used to that. We're not used to that. Even though we can't leave the house for the most part, we're not used to that type of liberty and freedom and just having an open schedule that we actually have to plan out and do things to be successful.
Yeah, exactly. Like, normally there's someone that has almost planned out your day. Like, now you're going to school, now you're doing this, now you're going to work. Then you go home and cook dinner, and then you go to bed. But now you just have all day, and you have to figure out how to plan it out so it gets productive.
Gotcha. Agree. So let's kind of go now into views on virtual education. And one of the things Christian and I would talk about the most is just the difference between the education system in Denmark and the United States. I very much prefer and think the Denmark system and model is better. And I'm hoping that America will kind of start to wake up and realize that we have to start doing education completely different than what we're doing now. I've been a teacher in the public education system for I think over 16 years now. I've been in inner city and rural. I've subbed, I've coached. I've kind of seen it all from all perspectives. So Christian, just kind of give us a quick summary. You've been in the American education system. Obviously, you're in Denmark now. Just give us some of the big differences, just from before we get into the COVID talk. What are some of the big differences in the Denmark model?
So in Denmark, like, you choose your way of what you want to do way faster than in America. So then in America, you have to go through high school, and you'll be around 18 when you graduate, and then it's first after that point that you get to decide what sort of direction you want to go into. Whereas in Denmark, you graduate from 9th grade, and then you can decide if you want to go into trade schools, or if you want to go to high school, and if you want to get a college degree, or like, you are in charge of your education, and you don't have to be there. You're not forced to do anything. Also meaning that most of the students that I have class with, they actually want to be in school. They like going to school. They're passionate about it because no one forces them to be there.
Right. So I love that choice. And I think what we have done in America is a one-size-fits-all system, putting everyone in the same box. I'll bring up a picture here that I always show in class. And I think one of the things we talked about is you were kind of shocked at how many American students didn't really like or enjoy going to school, or I guess their effort. You were kind of shocked at how little effort some students gave compared to what you see in Denmark.
Yeah, so I'm used to people doing their best and actually wanting school, because it makes sense to them and it has a purpose. Whereas what I experienced in America in a lot of cases was that they were just there because they had to be there. Had they had a different choice, they wouldn't have been there. And that just tells me that those students need some sort of different education.
Yeah, I'm trying to bring up, here we go, I got it. So this is kind of what I always show my students in class, is the education system in America is very similar to, this here, where they're saying, for a fair selection, everyone has to take the same exam. Please climb that tree. So these are the students that I see with different abilities and different skill sets, but we're telling them everyone has to take Algebra 2, even though if, you're not good at math or you have a learning disability and you're really good at a trade school or building something or working on welding, you can do that 1 hour a day, but then we're going to have you, write, take standardized tests and do all this stuff that doesn't really help students in the end.
Yeah.
And then kids end up hating school. They don't want to go. And that's kind of what you saw when you came, to America. So we're trying to shift now into virtual education here in the States. And not surprisingly, from a lot of teachers I'm talking to, is students are not really participating. We can't get a hold of them. They're not answering their email. If they do, it's like a few times and then you don't kind of hear from them. So what's going on in Denmark, and how are you guys kind of handling the virtual education?
So I'm in high school right now. And pretty much from day one, we actually had virtual education. Some teachers were a little slower getting it started up and using it, but at this moment, everyone is using it, and it's working fairly well. And we're not looking at it as being virtual education. We're looking at it as being education. It counts towards the totally hour count we need. So it's just like attending class, meaning that you will get an absence if you don't show up.
Yeah, and you told me like basically you guys are meeting every day. Like if you have whatever class, your classmates are like getting online at a predetermined time and actually meeting.
Yeah. So my day starts at 8:15 normally. So from 8:15 till somewhere around 2 or 3, I'm having classes behind my computer. But it depends on some teachers. They're just giving us paper online, and then we have to do that. And in other classes, they're actually teaching us and they're giving us notes. So it depends on the class, and it depends on what the teacher planned for the day. But in most classes, we meet online.
Okay.
For every hour.
And I think most states are following this, but they've kind of basically said in America, if the kids pass the third marking period, they can just keep that grade and do nothing. So if there was any motivation for students with grades, that's basically gone now. So I'm hearing from a lot of students basically like, well, hey, I had a D or C in that class, I'm good. And so the teachers have kind of lost some leverage there. So I don't know how this is going to play out. I'm going to focus just meeting one-on-one with my students. I've tried doing group stuff, and I've gotten 1 to 3 people to show up. So I just got to keep, rolling with the situation and figuring out what works and trying to reach out to the students one-on-one. But I'm trying to do that, get them to follow their passion. I'm trying to get them to take online courses on Udemy or Coursera in coding, photography, graphic design, whatever they're into. That's really what I'm trying to get them to do, rather than, put together some worksheets. My one thing I hate as a teacher, and you probably know this, is just busy work. I'm not into just giving
filling
kids
out the blanks.
Right. I'm much more of get them to think deeper, get them to focus on themselves and work on their mindset and their passion. So let's go into, let's see, we got Christina says kids need interaction with other children or otherwise they're going to have low self-esteem. I agree. And I think, right now we have to work on doing that virtually. That's really our only option now, but we're struggling to even do that. And I agree that you need that community and interaction, or it's gonna. I know as I've been watching, a lot of people are struggling with mental illness. I've heard the suicide hotlines are up 300%. I heard there's lots of domestic abuse going on because it already was before, and now you're stuck inside. I know alcohol sales are way up, so people are dealing with things in different ways. So to me, this is really just exposing everything. It's exposing for people where they're at, what they're doing, and it's really making them I'm hoping it makes them reevaluate their lives, but I think some of them are still stuck on listening to the media and not really focusing on themselves yet. So that's what I'm pushing. That's what I'm teaching. So in this pandemic, people are looking at, well, I don't have a job. Money stopped coming in. What's the government doing? Are they giving us more money? Denmark obviously already has a bigger safety net. So you guys are probably doing a lot better than in America. We're trying to piece together a bunch of legislation. Most people got their first stimulus check last week. I know some people are still waiting. I keep hearing unemployment being denied. People can't get disability. So, America's safety net is kind of a mess right now. So what's kind of the view there in Denmark, Christian, as when it comes to like money and how people are doing financially and with jobs and stuff?
So of course it has affected a lot of people financially. The whole tourist industry is, it's gone. It's non-existent, and the stock market is down. So it has been affecting people a lot. But Denmark has been sure to provide a lot of care packages for businesses to help businesses keep their workers and not fire them, to help them through this crisis. But there's still a lot of people that have been fired during this time. But we have a huge safety net that helps those guys too.
Yeah, so I definitely think America is going to be reevaluating that safety net. And we've talked before. I come from more of a libertarian perspective, and it's not that I'm against the government doing that. I just think they've done such a poor job in the past. It's hard to trust them. But as we were talking before, you said people in Denmark tend to trust their government more.
Yeah.
And I think that happens though because you're such a smaller country. And I would like to see the states take more control in the welfare or the safety net, because I think that brings that power closer to the people. And it would be a lot easier to have a safety net, whether it be for health care or for just unemployment stuff, if it came from the state versus the federal government. And then, you get into lobbyists and corruption and all that stuff in Washington, D.C. So for the most part, it sounds like the safety net's kind of already working because it's set up in Denmark.
Yeah, it's working pretty well. And there have been, all of the politicians, they've been sure to push through a lot of the care packages, and they've all been collaborating really well together. And they've been really good at informing us. And
it's like the exact opposite of America.
Yeah. and they're good at informing us at official briefings and telling us the current situation. And they're not afraid of telling, guys, we actually don't know where this will end. We don't know how it will look in the end, but they'll just tell us that. They're not lying. So most Danes, they have a huge trust in the government.
Right. So you and I kind of discussed before of, what is an asset and how do you preserve wealth? And I'm really trying to educate the younger generation in their teens and 20s right now, because I think we're about to see the biggest wealth transfer in human history. As the baby boomers are retiring, we see the stock market going down. We see oil going down to negative. I didn't even know that was possible until recently. And you and I have kind of talked about the petrodollar system. And in 72, America went off the gold standard. and we started the petrodollar system, which basically is where we said all oil in the world had to be bought by dollars, and we made deals with Saudi Arabia and a bunch of other people. And that's kind of propped up our debt system, which is, I think, 24 trillion now. So what are kind of your thoughts as a young man in Denmark when it comes to what do you want to invest in? Where do you see real assets and value right now as you're growing up in this time?
So I have this from my parents that I've mostly been into the stock market. That has like been my major thing. But then when this thing happened, I mean, the stock market completely crashed. I was lucky enough to pull out before it went all bad, but I know my parents did. Lost a lot, and I know a lot of people have lost a lot. So I'm more thinking, instead of having this small piece of paper saying you own 17,000 pieces of stock in this company, does that really mean anything during a time like this, where I'm thinking maybe silver, like you're into, might be more interesting?
Yeah, and I think the key and what I teach is diversification. And your parents' generation and my parents, they were pretty much told one thing: invest in the stock market, get a 401k or something like that, and just save for retirement, and everything will be okay. And now people are really questioning that, especially of like, is Social Security still going to be around, or is that going to go bankrupt? And like what you said is like, this is all just fake paper stuff. And then there's something called derivatives, which I don't want to get into, but basically it takes all the fake paper and it multiplies it by 40 or 50. So instead of, if there's 1 million shares of Apple, there's actually like 40 million or 50 million really when you count all the ETFs and the mutual funds and the derivatives. And, so this is really, I advise everyone to get a financial mentor. And mine has been Robert Kiyosaki for about 20 years. He wrote a book called Rich Dad, Poor Dad. I have all my students read it when we do financial literacy or our careers class. This was his tweet on April 21st. So he says, why are gold, silver, Bitcoin dropping in price? Many reasons. One is crash in the oil. The real reason is liquidity squeeze. That means the movement of money. Shortage of fake money is forcing sale of liquid real assets, gold, silver, Bitcoin, and fake money. Buying opportunity if you can find real gold, silver, and Bitcoin. So what he's trying to say there is that an asset puts money in your pocket, a liability takes it out of your pocket. So gold, silver, Bitcoin, and other cryptocurrencies can produce income by themselves, or they're going to go up in value because their supply is limited, or it takes resources to get new ones. So someone's either going to pay a miner to dig something out of the ground, or in Bitcoin's case, you're going to pay a miner to run a computer program to facilitate the network of transactions. Not all stocks are bad. I'm not against stocks. But I think in America, especially, we've just been sold this lie of like, just get stocks and you'll be fine. And I think, and I hope during this time, people realize they need to diversify themselves, whether it be real estate, gold, silver, cryptocurrencies, income producing assets. I'm also big into something called the infinite banking concept, which uses whole life insurance to basically become your own bank. So I'm really trying to teach people to take control of your finances, get educated, and diversify yourself and have real assets in your possession. Because it goes back to what you said about, I have this piece of paper that says I own something. Is that really worth anything? So what do you think is the hardest part of being a young person and trying to figure out, what is Bitcoin? Where do I get gold and silver? How do I know how to do this? What are some questions that you kind of have?
Like, I think my main question is where to begin, because there's so many options. There's so many people offering it. Like as for cryptocurrency, there's so many different cryptocurrencies. There's so many different ways of getting it. And that still, to me, is just a number on a screen. Just like money in the bank, it's just a number on the screen. Does it really mean anything? That has been hard for me to understand. Whereas silver and gold, that's more like physical. You can hold it in your hands and you have some sort of asset.
Yeah. So what I try to do is just get people to start simple. And when I started on this journey, I started with 1%. So I teach people to pay yourself 1% in a real asset. So you could start with gold, you could start with silver, you could start with Bitcoin. So what I would do is try to keep it in the top two. So keep it to gold and silver for your physical assets. Keep it to Bitcoin and Ethereum for your digital assets. And that's how I view, especially Ethereum, it's digital real estate. It's like owning a piece of the internet, because it actually serves a function. And so some people will say, well, cryptocurrencies doesn't have anything backing it, so it's worthless. No, it has a whole network backing it. It would be like if the internet had its own money. That's basically what Ethereum and Bitcoin are. The ability to transfer from anyone to anywhere and secure things, and there's no middleman. So I've tried to send people money in Europe even, and it's difficult because the banks don't talk to each other. Or you have to use something like Western Union or PayPal, and then they charge you 3 to 5%. I can send you Ethereum for probably 10 cents. I could send you $10,000 in 5 seconds for probably about 10 cents. And so that is the utility of cryptocurrency. It's permissionless and there's no central authority. And you can even find cryptocurrencies that track gold and silver. So it's almost like a way to send gold and silver digitally if you want to. And I do lots of programs or companies where I earn commission when people buy gold and silver from me. If someone's not ready for that, there's lots of websites you could go to order gold and silver. Or, well, in America, ours are shut down now, but there's usually local shops that you can also go to. But Kiyosaki is big on silver because anyone can get started. So if there's young students out there, I would say buy 1 ounce of silver. It's like between 20 and 25 US dollars now. And maybe just try to do that once a month. That's what I do is I auto save. So I set up my credit card. I just get my silver in the mail, easy peasy, forget about it. And I like to give it away to Christmas to my nephews, because I wanted, I could give them a toy. They could play with it for 2 days and then it's broken. So I'm giving them something that I hope will last them forever. And when they're 22, they'll be like, oh, thank you, Uncle Mike, for getting us silver when we were 3. We thought it was stupid at the time, but now we have, who knows how much value and worth, silver and gold are going to be in 10 or 15 years. So any last words, Christian, or any shout outs you want to give to Greenville or anything you want to say? Oh, I know. Every show I'm trying to end with a minute, give the guest a minute to say anything you want. So if you could say anything you wanted to the world about anything, and they would be like, all right, this is what Christian is about, what would you kind of leave for them? Could be about anything.
About anything. Okay. I would tell people to be careful, keep distance, and keep a big smile on their faces, and look at this as being one good of a life's lesson. Learn from it, and then we'll get through this pretty fast.
I love that message of looking at this as an opportunity. The phrase I've been using is you can look at this as self-isolation or self-betterment. So you can choose to just Netflix and chill and play video games all day and waste your time, or you can take this time to better yourself and invest in yourself and come out with skills and learn to follow your passion and be independent when we don't have all these authorities telling you what to do, whether it be school, whether it be your work, and really realize, like, what does it mean to be happy? What does it mean to be free? What are finances? Am I, a slave in some sort of system? And so I'm really hoping that people start to question themselves and really focus on investing in themselves. All right, Christian. Well, it was good to catch up with you. Keep in touch, and maybe we'll do this every month or so just to kind of see the global perspective on what's happening. Some states in America are starting to reopen, and I think next week some more are set to schedule. So it'll be interesting.
That'll be really exciting to see. Like, first we had the shutdown and how the world handled that differently, and now both in Denmark and also down in Europe, even in Italy, that was one of the major hotspots. Now they're starting to open up again slowly. So that'll be really exciting to see how things develop and how it all turns out.
For sure. All right. Well, I know a lot of people are struggling out there. If you need help with anything, please reach out. The Financial Freedom Family is focused on helping anyone in Greenville with their mind, health, or wealth. And right now I'm just continuing to get that message out there and, try to change the world one person at a time. And Christian, thank you again for coming on.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, stay safe, stay healthy, and stay positive. We'll get through this.
Thank you.
All right, we'll talk to you soon, brother.
Bye.